Democrats and some Republicans even called him out when he blocked unemployment benefits for all those people in the country. Now Republicans are blocking unemployment benefits again, and Republicans in leadership positions are saying things like, we're all Jim Bunning now. So we should have stood with Jim Bunning the first time around. We're all going to do that now.
Well, at their own peril. And that's what I think when you look at the Supreme Court justice nominee and whoever it's going to be, the point of this is that the American people want us to keep working on jobs, financial regulation, to move forward on homegrown energy. And they do it at their own peril if they want to devote the summer to blocking a nominee. And when you look at, say, Sotomayor, who they claimed was, called her all kinds of names, 95% of the time she voted with a Republican nominee when she was on a 3-judge panel. And most scholars that looked at her record said she was basically a moderate, that she wasn't extreme. And so I actually believe in reality here that some of the names that have been put forth that the president could nominate, who clearly would be Democratic nominees, but when you look at, say, a Lindsey Graham, what he said with Sotomayor, remember that speech, it was pretty courageous. He said, look, I wouldn't have picked her, but my job is to look at who's qualified. Do they have the qualifications? And I'm proud to vote for her. And I'll never forget that moment. And that's what I'm hopeful will happen here as well.
I think it's not an accident that it was Senator John Kyle this weekend who floated the idea of, again, filibustering a non-existent nominee for a vacancy that doesn't exist. Because he's already outraged by the prospect of this non-existent person. But Senator John Kyle made those same comments within a week of the election in 2008. At that point, he was already talking about filibustering a Supreme Court nominee.
Right.
On the other side of the aisle, they see some political advantage to mounting a filibuster campaign here, as historic as it would be.
They do, but in the end, on the Sotomayor case, as you know, they backed down. There were a lot of people within their own party who had different feelings about her. They didn't want to piss off every Hispanic voter in the country. They knew that she had some qualities. Didn't mean they all voted for her, but they sure, they asked her tough questions, and then the hearing got done, and she got confirmed. And I'm hopeful that will happen as well in this case.
Optimism.
I am,
I resist it, but I can feel it.
Yeah.
I can feel it in the room. When I look at that graph that I showed in the intro here of the filibuster, over time, looks like a half pipe. It makes me think, hey, this needs to be fixed. Hey, this is a problem that's being abused. Does it make you feel that way, too? Does it make people in the Senate generally feel that way?
Especially some of the newer senators that have come in that aren't just, steeped in the tradition of this wonderful filibuster. We see it as a problem. A lot of us have managed our organizations, and we like to move forward and get things done. So there are a lot of efforts to reform. I will point out the last person that was successful in reform was Walter Mondale from Minnesota. Right. It was 67 votes, and he got it down to 60. So a number of us are saying, well, can we get the number down some more? Can we still allow for this debate? Can we allow for people to have to actually stand on the floor and push the filibuster so they have to own what they're doing? If they want to filibuster unemployment benefits for people who are out of work for no fault of their own because Wall Street messed up, are they going to actually take to the floor and do that day after day after day? That's another reform that we'd love to see.
And you'd support that?
Yes.
Senator Amy Klobuchar, Democrat of Minnesota, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And I don't know, I think you could talk them into pink robes.
Yeah, that would be a very nice touch.
Would look really good on everybody.
So, especially on Scalia.
I was just going to say, especially on Alito, but you're totally right. It's Scalia. Thank you, Senator. Nice to see you.
I'm not a Washington insider, even though I grew up here in D.C. My view on politics is much more grassroots-oriented. It's not old boy network-oriented. And so I tend to, come at it a little bit stronger, a little bit more streetwise, if you will. That's rubbed some feathers the wrong way.
Republican Party Chairman Michael Steele this morning trying to rub some feathers back the right way. To move on from last week's very bad headlines, right before he got hit with today's very bad headlines. Last week, a week ago today, it was the conservative website Daily Caller that broke the story that the Republican Party spent nearly $2,000 of its donors' money at a bondage-themed sex show nightclub in West Hollywood. The money was spent there on RNC business and then reimbursed out of RNC funds. After the article came out last week, Mr. Steele said the funds would be unreimbursed and that a young female staffer would be fired. Then we found out that the daughter of Steele's Republican Party national co-chair was paid $13,000 of Republican donors' money to be a speechwriter. Then we found out that among the RNC's listed expenditures were office supplies that they say they bought at a liquor store and meals that they say they bought at a fancy clothing boutique, Henri Bendel, and a fly fishing tackle shop. Night crawlers. Many of these stories that make the Republican Party under Michael Steele look very, very bad did first appear in conservative publications, and they're full of quotes from anonymous Republican insiders. So in other words, if Michael Steele is getting pushed here, if there's a campaign afoot to leak damaging stuff to make him look bad, it seems to be coming from within the Republican Party. Now, if you're looking for further signs of division among top-tier Republicans, consider also that a group of former Republican Party officials last week announced that they were forming an alternative to the RNC. They publicly called on Republican donors to give funds to them instead of to the party and Michael Steele. Then Sarah Palin tried to distance herself from the RNC as well, demanding very publicly that they take her name off of an RNC fundraising appeal. All that happened in just 1 week. One long week. And now starts week 2. To add to last week's litany, consider also the new news that one of the biggest fundraisers in the whole Republican Party, former Ambassador Sam Fox, has resigned from his post at the RNC. According to, once again, anonymous Republican sources, quoted in Politico, Mr. Fox was, quote, deeply troubled by the pattern of self-inflicted wounds and missteps at the RNC under Chairman Steele. Also today, the chief of staff of the Republican National Committee resigned. His name is Ken McKay. The new chief of staff of the RNC will be the man who ran Michael Steele's unsuccessful Senate campaign in Maryland in 2006. If that is supposed to inspire confidence, consider that after that campaign was over and Mr. Steele lost by more than 10 points, his campaign finance chairman told the feds that Steele's campaign gave $37,000 in campaign funds to a company that was run by Michael Steele's sister. The Steele campaign finance chairman said that to the feds right before he was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison for a multi-million-dollar fraud that was unrelated to the campaign. But wait, there's more. In addition to elevating his old campaign chairman, Michael Steele has also brought on board at the RNC a new special assistant for finance, is the title, a special assistant for finance. At a time when it might really behoove the RNC to be hiring people with spotless reputations as fiscally responsible stewards of other people's money, who does the RNC pick for its new special assistant for finance? They picked a man who was just recently fined thousands of dollars for using donor funds to pay for his own personal expenses. As the Washington Post reports, new RNC fundraiser Neil Alpert was ordered in 2007 to repay more than $37,000 that he was found to have spent improperly while he chaired a political action committee in D.C. Mr. Alpert denied the allegations, but Politics Daily reports today that he did pay a $4,000 fine that was levied against him by the D.C. Office of Campaign Finance. Again, we're still trying to find out if he ever repaid the money he was found to have misappropriated. Money that was supposed to go to inner city kids for things like rehabbing rundown urban playing fields. We think he paid the fine, but we can't figure out if he repaid the tens of thousands of donors' money that was supposed to go to the inner city kids that the D.C. finance folks say he misappropriated. We will let you know what we hear from him if the RNC ever calls us back. All in all, though, week 2 is not turning out to be an improvement on last week in terms of headlines for Michael Steele and the Republican National Committee. Joining us now is Chris Hayes, Washington editor of The Nation, with whom I think I'm going to disagree tonight. Hi,
Bring
Chris.
it on.
Woohoo! All right, let's fight. Ready?
Yes.
I think there's no way that Michael Steele survives this. I think he has to resign. You think he won't?
Right. I think he won't. Well, let me say this is not an endorsement of his performance as the head of the RNC, which, as you've laid out quite aptly, is not very good. Here's the reason I think he won't. One is that one of the things I've learned in Washington, it's the Donald Rumsfeld rule, which is that when, after Abu Ghraib, there's all this pressure and this mounting pressure, people start speculating if you're going to resign. If you just refuse to do it, eventually it goes away. I think Michael Steele understands that because I think he's enough of a loose cannon. The other thing that's fascinating about this, and it's actually very similar to some of the dynamics that happened with Howard Dean, is there's two constituencies here. There's the constituencies of the donors who are clearly infuriated, but they're not the one who actually institutionally control his fate. The people that control his fate are the members of the Republican National Committee that are made up of the county chairs, the ones that elected him, and to get rid of him, you'd have to get 2/3 of those people to vote him out. I think Michael Steele understands that basically he's bulletproof, and I think actually from the sort of first-person perspective of Michael Steele, if he's smart, he'll just hang on.
But doesn't it matter who's pushing? I mean, even with just the Rumsfeld example, in that case, you get, moonbats like me, and you get, retired military officers and those people calling for him to step down, and then he just gets to stand firm and look conservative and have people line up behind him. In this case, it seems very clear that the people who are both pushing and pulling Michael Steele are in the upper echelons of the Republican National Committee, which both means they're people who he needs in order to keep doing his job well, because he needs money from them, but they're also people who are in the position of offering him the next job that he gets to go to, so he gets to sort of have a glide landing here.
That's exactly, I think, actually, you put your finger on the crucial issue. How much does Michael Steele care about his next gig? Because if he doesn't care, and if he understands that he kind of has these people over a barrel, because firing him in a really messy way in which he says, I was forced out, makes things really ugly for the Republicans. If he realizes that he has him over a barrel and he doesn't care about his next gig, then he's bulletproof. If